All right, theoretically beginning. See if we pop up. Indeed we do. Mute myself, edit video, back out, go to the, well, first, monetize, please. I'd like to earn money too, instead of just YouTube getting money. All right, working, double check, on, okay. Back to live, switch chat to live, and no one is yet here, including Josh. So anybody watching the VOD, you can go ahead and probably, I'd say, skip the first probably 10, maybe 12 minutes. All right, everything looks all right. And back on my regular mic now, so I don't sound weird. And obnoxious like I did when I had to resort to the Yeti mic, which is the one I record videos with, which is kind of weird because it sounds better to record videos on the Yeti mic. But for some reason, live streaming on the Yeti mic, the audio sounds really messed up. It says people are chatting, but there's nothing there. You make sure I have it on live chat. I'm gonna assume that's just Josh dabbing to show that he's arrived. It's just not showing up for me yet. Oh no, wait, never mind. It went to 0. Hello? And it's not Josh, actually. He is really slacking. That's like 3 streams in a row that he has not been the first person to show up. Alright. We'll wait the usual 5 or 10 minutes or so to see who does or doesn't show up. So in the meantime, while I wait for anyone else to show up, check stuff really fast, see if the monthly non-OPEC countries oil production data has updated yet. Probably hasn't, because for the last 2 years or so, it's started being really late. Like up until about 2 years ago, it updated on the first of the month every month, but now for the last 2 years, it's been like usually a week or a two late. And still October, so no. Not yet. Well, we can hope it comes tomorrow at least. Check on prices. Silver, what are you doing? You physically can't be this low. You can't stay here. If anybody's still waiting to grab silver, or anybody who has money at least, I'd say go ahead. Now's the time to do it. Because it physically cannot keep staying here. Else, no real changes from yesterday. Tellurium's still going up though. I mean, that's a long time. That was a long time in the making, at least. All right. Well, either 3 or 5 people, YouTube is being inconsistent with its data as usual. But neither of the people talking yet is Josh. Josh, are you asleep? I'll send him a text. I better not have to actually call him and wake him up. All right, I got the list. Google Earth. At least get it ready. I have an odd feeling I'm forgetting about something, but I can't remember what I forgot. So Don't you do this to me. Come on. I need you to actually function. There you go. Thank you. Oh, hey, look, it's China. Zhongguo, one of two countries that I discovered are many of my viewers' sacred cows, either Russia or China. You know, it's pretty weird because I mean I've made videos like critical about stuff with India, and most people from India are like actually well responsive to it. They're not like angry fanboyish like when I make stuff about Russia or China. Although the hilarious thing is that the people like getting angry defensive for China and Russia are most of them are not Chinese or Russian. They're foreign fanboys basically. I wonder if I made something on North Korea if I discover that I have a bunch of like North Korean fanboys in my comments. That would be interesting to say the least. Oop. Here but not he, you mean you're not going to be here for the next 15 minutes or you weren't here for the first 15 minutes? I'm assuming I'm assuming the second one or the first one rather because I've only been live for 6 minutes. And Paul Morgan says exclamation points, I guess. Usually people usually people put words before they put an exclamation point, but he just says exclamation points just for the sake of it. Do 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 do. All right, got about 4 or 5 more minutes, maybe. People are starting to pour in now, or not. That 4 versus 3, although that 3 was an 8 like 2 seconds ago. All right, we'll see. Uh, oh yeah, and I actually should be able to do the geography stuff again because Cetera, the geography site, finally fixed itself after being broken for like the last month. Because it was broken. I don't know if it was one of the sites that they run ads for on there that like malwared them or something. But every like 60 seconds of being on the site, the tab would just immediately go to would leave Cetera and like take you to another site. And it was one of the sites that one of their side ads was for. But apparently they managed to fix that, so Cetera actually like functions again, so I can actually get back to my epic geography quest. As I am now at, let us check. I'm at 169 countries plus 3 should be countries. Everything in green I have learned the states or provinces of, or islands if it's an island nation like the Philippines or Indonesia. Or at least in the case of big, huge island nations like Micronesia, I'm not learning all 4,000 islands that compose Micronesia. I learned the 4 primary archipelagos that they are grouped into. And I'm not even sure who do I want to go to next. After that, Josh Dabs again. Paul, I don't know what you're doing. You said exclamation mark and then question mark, so I have no idea. I don't know what your angle is. But all right. Uh, I'm too lazy to have like a countdown timer for you guys. So we have somewhere between 2 and 3 minutes before I'm actually going to start the actual stuff that we're here for. So let me chug some water before I get going. I'm still going to try to make this not too long of a stream because I'm starting to get a headache. Well, I mean, I wasn't thinking of having one that actually had sound. I was just going to have the 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 numbers themselves. I mean, if I wanted to be annoying, if I wanted to be annoying, I could do what that guy did in that one Call of Duty match me and Josh were playing once, where I don't know if anyone remembers Modern Warfare 2, but the final kill streak is a nuke, and when you call it in, a 5 second timer comes up and it's like tactical nuke incoming, boing, 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 and it makes that ticking down sound until the timer's gone and it detonates. Well, we were playing Modern Warfare 2 once, and some dude like hacked the match and just wanted to piss everybody off, and so he activated the nuke timer, but he had hacked it so that it's set to 30 minutes, and so the match got dragged out for 30 minutes because the match normally would have only lasted 10 minutes or until I think someone got like 30 kills or whatever. But he hacked it so A, the kill limit was overridden, and B, the timer was overridden. Instead, it was a 30-minute match just running the stupid nuke timer sound the whole time, just because this guy wanted to piss people off. Helium. No, helium's not running out. There's not a actual like supply volume like issue like in the actual amount of helium. There is a issue in terms of access regarding helium. Yeah, I can show you. So I actually have the charts here of production of stuff. So helium's been pretty flat for the last almost 2 decades now, at about 160 million cubic meters per year. So there is plenty of helium like within the Earth. It's just the rate at which we can get it is extremely limited because it's only we can only get it from certain places, and at that, obviously, we can only capture it at certain rates. Like basically almost all of the helium that supplies the entire world's demand for it comes from uh Kansas in the US, Qatar over in the Persian Gulf, Algeria, Poland, and then a little bit, like a tiny bit from Russia and a tiny bit from Iran. But in terms of the bulk supply, uh, almost all of it comes from Kansas in the U.S., Qatar, and Algeria, and then in like descending order after that, you have Poland, Russia, and Iran. Although Russia does have a fair amount of helium that accompanies its natural gas, but Russia is pretty backward and inefficient at a lot of stuff. So they've never really gotten around to setting up like mass helium extraction from their gas. I mean, it would have been nice, you know. They also could have made plenty of money off of it, but they didn't. They also could have not decided to commit ultra nationalist suicide by invading Ukraine. But hey, you know, they they just- they still did that too. So you know, what are you going to do? You can't force people to make intelligent decisions. Believe me, I did waste like a decent period of my short but feels very long life, like stressing over that, wishing like I could force people to actually make intelligent decisions, but it's not something you can do. The amount of helium that is used for lifting, for balloons, and for limps is it's less than 1%. The majority of helium is used for critical industrial purposes, which is actually why we're so concerned about it, because it is needed for precision welding, aka the type of the welding that like puts together ships and aircraft, and small like critical machine components. Basically, the type of welding where there is where there is no there can be absolutely zero tolerance for like microscopic defects or whatever. Because usually you can use argon gas instead. That will push oxygen out of the way uh, for to a certain degree. However, only helium, when you push helium in, does a complete purge of all oxygen present. So helium is needed for actual like precision welding, where any kind of micro faults are completely unacceptable. So, like I said, ships, aircraft, uh, micro welding for like small precision machine parts and stuff, and it's also a super cryocoolant. It's the only thing that lets us get down to like super critical temperatures, which allows us to do a lot of modern medical stuff, and also allows us to advance technologically because being able to go down to supercritical temperatures is what allows us to do a lot of fancy, ultra fancy modern science stuff. And something else I'm forgetting. Oh yeah, well since I'm right over Taiwan, the production of processors of semiconductors, uh, the the precise lithographic uh, lasering of germanium crystals and silicon crystals, the wafers they could use to make processors. That process has to be conducted in a environment in a room that is pure helium, because even the tiniest tiniest like nano percentage of oxygen would corrupt the process. And as I said, helium is the only thing that is will do a absolute 100% pure oxygen purge. Helium will displace oxygen completely, or at least completely enough, as opposed to like other noble gases like say argon. But helium is the only environment that we can produce semiconductor wafers, aka computer processors and memory chips and stuff from. So that's the important stuff that we need helium for. Lifting gas for balloons and blimps is accounts for less than 1% of helium's use. But okay, I've gone on enough, and we have either 9 or 10 people here. So let us begin. And forgive me, I didn't put these in any particular order of importance. I just wrote them down in literally no order, actually. I wasn't really thinking. So, the first thing on our list, and you're going to find that we're going to be bouncing back and forth between a few specific countries. Uh, we'll call them problem children. So, first off, we have chromium. Chromium, for those who are unaware, uh, hold up. Chromium is a metal. It is particularly a steel alloying metal that we add to steel mixtures to make various types of stainless steels. Basically, any steel that is going to be in contact with water has to have chromium in it. And the regular, like just the generic basic alloy formula for stainless steel before you do like different things to it to make different kinds is about 70% iron, or I think 68% iron, 18, 18% chromium, 10% nickel, and then 1% manganese, 1% carbon. So, chromium is at a decent amount of risk because about half the world's supply comes from South Africa. Half of the whole world's supply. And for those who don't know, South Africa is definitely a problem child. They are quickly descending into some form of national collapse, i.e., like Venezuela did back in the 2010s. In terms of South Africa's angle on it, it is because their power grid is repeatedly failing. As of now, at any given moment, half the country is in blackout, and this has been the case for almost a year now, and it's been progressively getting worse. At least about a year ago, it was usually like a large portion of the country would be without power for 3 to 6 hours of the day. Now it's at the point of usually like half the country being without power at any given time on any given day, and that is not good. One that's kind of crippling their economy, which is bad on the national level, and also then on the personal level because then people aren't able to get things that they need, and also they can't conduct their business, so they're not getting paid, so they can't even afford the things that they need, and said things are not there half the time now because the country is constantly in a massive blackout. And so the people are starting to get angry, and the government is, as the South African government usually does, not solving the problem because the government actually caused the problem. You see, as I have explained many times in many streams, South Africa's power grid setup is extremely poorly designed and very corrupt. Normally, in almost any other functioning country, coal-fired power plants have the train tracks literally come right next to the plant, where uh, there's a an offloader mechanism that takes the coal from the train cars and loads it up the conveyor belt and stuff. In South Africa, they don't have that design. Instead, the power plants are intentionally built miles away from the nearest rail junctions so that massive dump trucks have to then take the coal and haul it over to the power plants. And that's because of backdoor deals that were made between those in power years ago and their buddies who own the trucking companies so that the trucking companies in South Africa could have guaranteed constant government contracts. And also, on top of that, the previous presidents of South Africa have constantly appointed their personal friends to be the directors of the national power grid, and said personal friends then embezzled the money, constantly diverted the funds from the power grid company to their own personal bank accounts and those of the president. And then the president would find out, quote unquote, pretend to be outraged, fire that person, and then appoint another one of his personal friends to be in charge of the power grid company. And they would keep repeating the process. And it wasn't just one president who did that, it was almost all of them. And that process keeps repeating. So the power grid network has constantly been in lack of funds, so they haven't been able to pay to actually like keep up with maintenance on the nation's power grid and replace like old generators, old fired boilers and stuff. And so now everything is just breaking down, and they can't afford they can't even afford to get like the coal anymore because they can't afford the exorbitant fees those trucking companies charge to truck the coal from the faraway train depots to the power stations because of the setup that the previous presidents made to guarantee money for their buddies in the trucking companies. And so the whole situation is just deteriorating, and South Africa is on its way into chaos. And they've been in and out of mass riots in a number of cities already, and they have straight up deployed. They've deployed their military multiple times now over the last several months to try to suppress the riots, and so far they've been able to quell things each time. However, it's only going to last so long, and so that is the general reason for the South African factor in disruption of many things. The first of which is chromium, of which they supply half of the world's demand. Not that there isn't chromium elsewhere in the world, it's just that the chromium is very concentrated right here in this area of South Africa, and it's pretty cheap to mine it from there. So that's where we've been getting it. Thankfully, it's not as all South African as it used to be. Now we get a fair bit from Kazakhstan and a fair bit from Turkey as well now, and a little bit in the U.S. However, it's an issue because that's kind of a danger to our global ability to make steel. And Turkey is also potentially an issue as well, although not as big of one. For Turkey, what? Excuse me, I didn't click on that. Get off my screen. For Turkey, thankfully, most stuff that's mined in Turkey occurs over here, but the chromium deposits occur right around here, which, if you're familiar with current events, is where the earthquake happened. And normally, Turkey's chromium ore is exported via the ports down in Hatay, and those were disrupted, and the rail lines were fractured and everything because of chasms that the earthquake opened up. So it took a week or two for them to reroute stuff from the mines over towards other ports further west, like Antalya and Izmir. So the supply from Turkey was restored pretty fast, and Turkey only accounts for about 16% of the world's supply, anyways. But it is still one of the only non-South African major sources. So it's a bit troubling because if anything else happens in Turkey in the next little while, or if Turkey just mismanages things, which Recep Erdogan, or sorry, it's something like one, I think, Erdogan. Uh, he is rather he has a fond habit of mismanaging things. So it might go any which way. Kazakhstan is thankfully nice and reliable though, and trolly. They have been trolling Putin this whole time, and it has been hilarious. So, back to South Africa already? Yes, in fact, because we have many more things that we depend on South Africa for that are coming into immediate risk because of their degeneration. Next up on the list are the platinum group metals, platinum and palladium, particularly up here in Limpopo province, the Bushveld upwelling complex. For the world's platinum supply, about 70% comes from South Africa alone. For its palladium supply, about 40% still comes from South Africa. And for its rhodium supply, 90% is dependent upon South Africa. And a lot of the other supplies for the platinum group metals are dependent upon Russia, which is quite a risk of its own upcoming that we'll get to in a minute. But that's quite a concern because the platinum group metals are critical for catalytic converters, which are needed for ground vehicles. They are also critical in various functions in electronics for connecting currents between different components of the electronics that operate at different temperatures. They are also what allow us to have digital thermometers in the present day instead of still using sticks filled with mercury, along with numerous other things. And then, while still staying here in South Africa, we have the manganese issue. About a third of the world's manganese supply comes from South Africa again, over here in the same area as the chromium. And manganese is critical to any and every type of steel. At its most basic foundational composition, before you alloy anything else, steel is about 98% iron, 1% manganese, 1% carbon. And about one third of the world's manganese comes from South Africa, which is at risk because their constant power grid failures, which mining operations require a lot of electrical power. They do have uh, they do have large diesel generators on hand that they can fire up. However, usually if there's a complete cutoff, they only have enough to run for like a few days. And yeah, so as things continue deteriorating and getting worse and worse, that is causing actual issues and disruptions. And next on the list is checking chat, actually. Well, I mean, now would be the better time to visit Taiwan. I would vacate before it approaches fall, as when whichever year China chooses to do it. If they have any modicum of intelligence, then they're going to try the invasion during fall, because that's when the waters between Taiwan and China are the calmest, which means the amphibious landing force would have the shortest journey and thus spend the shortest amount of time under fire, about like 6 hours, as opposed to if they tried the crossing in the spring, it would be something like 10 to 12 hours to cross that distance because the waters are far rougher in the spring. So now is definitely the better time to visit Taiwan. In terms of like actually when, I don't think they will do it this year. I think they will repeat what we just had this fall, where they did that massive buildup and kept trying to play it off as just an assembly for a parade, even though there was then no parade. I think they're going to do another fake out again as both another practice run for to practice assembling mass amounts of force, uh, and also I'm pretty sure they're covertly like leaving decent amounts of the equipment there each time they do it. So I do think they will do a fake out again this year. Obviously, I could be wrong. The Xi Jinping could decide to just roll the dice and go for it. But I do think this year will be like one more fake out. Um, after after this year, starting next year is when I consider it like tipping into all right, there's like a fair chance this year this year and each preceding year is going to be it. Partly because again they have to do it before 2027 now, because by then we're going to have given Taiwan so much stuff that the suicidal, doomed to faceplant invasion is going to become like a completely self-destructing faceplanting invasion. And apparently the schedule is actually already sped up compared to what it originally was. or what we originally shifted it to, because after Russia invaded Ukraine, we shifted our schedule for Taiwan from starting to give them HIMARS and the SAM systems and Patriot missile batteries and Abrams tanks and Apache helicopters and stuff. We were going to start all that in 2026 or so, and then really ramp it up in like 2028. Once Russia started invading Ukraine, we shifted our plans, we accelerated things, and decided we were going to start giving Taiwan stuff this year. Well, it turns out we acted even faster than that because they already have their first round of Patriot missile batteries because they've been seen actually deployed around the island. And we already, despite our initially saying we were going to move ahead the delivery of Abrams tanks to them from 2028 forward to 2025, it turns out by 2025, what we actually meant was uh, this year because we already just shipped them their first batch that they are now training with on their firing grounds. So China can't wait too long, and like I'm pretty sure this is also like a strategic play on our part to basically kind of force their hand before they're ready, and to prepare Taiwan as much as we would have anyways ahead of time to then force them to go and have everything set up in the worst possible like scenario for China by the time they are then forced to have to go forward early. And but I'm pretty sure they will still this year, this fall, it's still just going to be another fake out assembly. Uh, as I don't think they're gonna immediately jump for it because remember Russia did one fake out back in spring of 2021 before then invading last year in winter. I don't think China's going to repeat like that exact thing of only doing one fake out and then immediately jumping for it. I think they're although it would now be better for them the earlier they go. They're still probably going to be slightly cautious and want to lull things like just a little bit, even though you can't because no one's that stupid. Everybody knows it's coming. But hey, back to the list. Cobalt, critical for big narcissist Elon Musk's EV batteries and for some other stuff, but most of it gets consumed to make batteries. Although it is necessary for nickel superalloys for aircraft engines and power plant turbines. 70% of the world's supply comes from the Congo. And it's not suddenly now at risk, it's actually constantly at risk all the time. Because the Congo, the big one, not the small one, this one here is the small one. The small one is fine and stable. The big one here is not fine and not stable. In fact, it has been in a five-way civil war for 50 years. 50 years. Since the 1970s, it has been in a civil war. It just won't stop. Uh, I think two or three of the like separatist factions are all up here. So it doesn't usually risk supplies because most of the mines are down here. However, a few times when occasionally when the government and the Congolese military gets really, really incompetent, the separatist forces are able to like completely overwhelm them and overrun things and actually like sweep all the way down here, and thus they cut off the rail junctions from which the supplies from the mines are shipped out to the ports. And that does happen every few years. Back in 2018, I believe it was the last time that it spread down there, and that was when cobalt prices increased by like 6 times. For the moment, the fighting is still confined to up here, where it usually is. However, it can always spread if the Congolese military like suddenly collapses, like it occasionally does. Then and stuff starts getting overrun. Then all bets are off. So that's not a something that has suddenly become a risk like South Africa and the Russia and China Taiwan situations. That's something that has always been a risk and is probably going to forever keep being a risk because their civil war has been going on for 5 decades now. It's not like it's about to stop anytime soon. All right, what else do we have? Oh, well, while we're in the area, tantalum. Tantalum, about 40% of the world's supply, is also mined right here in the Congo and a little bit down in Zambia, but Zambia is nice and stable. So the Congo is where the worry is. Tantalum is a very rare, very critical material. It's what allows us to make the very small, not not micro scale, but mini scale capacitors, the types that are used in and thus allow the proper functioning of electronics, like computers, phones, and everything, communication networks. 40% of the world's tantalum is mined down there in the Congo. And so that also throw that in with with the constant risk of their civil war potentially sweeping downwards. And then tin, tin, tin. Thankfully, a huge chunk of the world's tin supply comes from a nice, nice stable country, with the exception of one radical Islamist province up there. But the rest of Indonesia is nice and stable. And most of, huge, sorry, not most of, but a huge chunk of the world's tin comes from this island right here off the coast of Sumatra. So that is the bulk of tin supply is safe. However, a decent portion of the world's tin does come from Myanmar, or you may call it Burma. And Myanmar is not stable. So, in case you were unaware, Myanmar also, like the Congo, has been in a civil war for 50 years. Now, their civil war, unlike the Congo, their civil war actually turns off and turns on. Like they'll have decades long periods of like no fighting between the government and the separatists, uh, and then it'll just start up. And it's been ongoing like pretty badly for the last 2 years or so. And thankfully, at least though, since I am on the separatist side in this case because the government of Myanmar is genocidal, not just towards ethnic minorities, also towards religious minorities, and also towards anyone who opposes the government. So I'm absolutely on the separatist side in this case because the the government of Myanmar needs to go, and even if the outside world, U.S. included, did things magnanimously, like for no benefit, there would be no real uh, opportunity to like do anything with Myanmar, anyways, because China is right there and kind of considers Myanmar its sock puppet, basically. So as Myanmar lets China or is letting China construct a naval base on their coast because China wants a position from which to be able to position naval strength for future confrontations with India, which it's not going to have because after attempting and failing at Taiwan, China's going to, at what speed, I don't know, but China's going to implode. And then eventually India is going to implode from lack of availability, particularly in terms of water, and then food following the lack of water to provide for its citizens. So ultimately, a lot of that's not even going to come to fruition. But China is doing that nonetheless. But Myanmar, unstable, unreliable Myanmar, supplies about 10% of the world's tin, and tin is a lot more critical than it used to be. It now is kind of part of what allows us to have electronics, and because it is the primary, similar to how iron is the bulk core ingredient of steel. Tin is the bulk core ingredient of soldering alloys, which we use for electronics because you can't weld electronics because that would, kind of melt them. And check chat. Uh, break up as in like separate into separate smaller nations. No, not really. That's not that's not among my that's not among one of the other ones that I suspect a breakup from. Uh, Nigeria is a more likely breakup than South Africa. Personally, at least from my outlook of things. Ethiopia, Ethiopia is almost absolutely going to shatter. Excuse me, I didn't ask to get more help out of Google Earth. I asked you to drag where I told you to. Like Tigray has made it quite clear that they're done, and Far and Amara are almost certainly going to break off as well, which will leave Ethiopia as this portion right here, and then there's probably going to be some confrontation with the Somali areas. And if that ends up breaking off, then Ethiopia will have shrunk into this, which is historically actually what Ethiopia usually was. Um, yeah, people forget that when Ethiopia was big in the past, that was when it was an empire. It's because it conquered surrounding tribes and kingdoms, not because it was normally this big block thing. But after the continent was left by European powers, this was thrown together along with a lot of other stuff. But yeah, those three are almost certainly going to break off. So Ethiopia is going to fragment. Nigeria is not like a guaranteed thing, but it's really starting to head that way. To the point that now actually, whereas they would have contradicted that previously, now actually even quite a larger number of Nigerians seem now be starting to be starting to speak on that as well. Mali is basically guaranteed because the entire north is ruled by radical Islamists, and the south, where the government has control, keeps having to like hire outside forces to regain the north of the country for them. At first, they begged France to come in, and then France came in, took it back pretty quickly. But then, after France dealt with their problems for them, the government of Bamako told France, "Thanks for dealing with our problems, but we're back to hating white people now, so get out." And so France left. The Islamists took back over, and then Bamako asked uh, the Wagner Group from Russia to come in and deal with the problems. And they were dealing with the Islamists all right, uh, not as good as the French military did. However, the government of Mali then found out that the Wagner Group is kind of famous for, a lot of human rights violations, and they started committing a lot of human rights violations. So now Bamako is not all too keen on having the Russian mercenaries there and wants them gone. And once they're gone and the Islamic forces sweep back in again, they're going to beg for help from somebody else again. I think they were suggesting this time they're going to ask collectively the African Union to like collectively send troops in and see if they can do anything. But basically, they're going to keep repeating this pattern until it finally sinks in that uh, they can't maintain control of the northern half of the country, and eventually everyone else is going to get tired of solving their problems for them, and so then the country is probably going to split right here into Mali and into I don't know. They'll probably just call it Sahel or something, or the Sahel. But yeah, South Africa, not really likely. An internal like implosion in the form of like what Venezuela went through in the late 2010s. They basically locked themselves into that now with how horribly they've mismanaged their literal like foundational critical infrastructure, i.e., their power grid. Okay, back to stuff though. Uh, Zoom out. Potash, normally called potash, but I was calling it potash for the longest time, and so I'm not really going to stop. Thankfully, most of the world's supply comes from Canada, but a chunk does come from shared reserves between Belarus and Russia, and that's now become an issue because they've been uh, they've been cut off from a lot of the equipment they use in the mining operations. Because despite what the image Moscow likes to put out, Russia is not actually self-reliant. They use they actually they have a pretty firm preference for Hitachi and I think Komatsu is the name of the other one in terms of their heavy equipment, their mining vehicles. Well, they're not getting any more of those now, and they only have so many spare parts on hand. And so, as I followed last spring, as everyone started leaving Russia, apart from the oil downturn thing, which I made a community post on recently, I also figured by around late fall of now this past year, 2022, is when the lack of mining stuff would start to catch up and they'd begin a downturn. And they have so far. It varies from mining product to mining product and from operation to operation, because each individual mine or operation would have most recently ordered like spare parts and new vehicles at different lengths of time from each other. But so it varies from mining product to mining product. But Russian mining output has gone down by, depending on the particular mineral or metal, between 2 to 7%, with the average being around 3% over the last 4 months or so. The downturn starting in November, right around when I expected it to, and so that will carry on still a bit slowly over this year. Like it'll begin to curve down a bit further. Probably by the end of the year, we'll pass into double digits, as in compared to pre-invasion levels. Russia's mining output will be 10 or more percent lower on average. And then over the course of next year, uh, ignoring the chaos that's going to erupt within Russia after the front collapses and the whole thing falls apart and everything, even if everything were just normal, by that time, by you go into the third year, so many you'll have stacked or benched so many vehicles already to cannibalize for spare parts that you will be quickly eroding the number you have operating in the mines. And so by then, over the course of the third absentee year, Russia's mining output will then start to take a major drop and probably get down to like 30% below pre-invasion levels. But for the moment, the initial slow drop that's I called back in spring began as I expected in late fall and has dropped by between 2 and 7%, depending on the mineral or metal. One of the uh, one of the biggest ones where the drop has appeared is in potash, which is the primary potassium mineral that is used for fertilizer, which is not a huge issue, despite what Peter Zion videos constantly make it out to be. That it will take Canada. He's really obsessed with saying decades in a dramatic voice. He keeps saying like it'll take Canada decades to expand its potash mining capabilities. No, it won't. They're already doing it, and theirs is literally right on the surface to the point that all they have to do is literally just dig up the overburdened dirt, several hundred more meters like in each direction to uncover more that they can start mining more of. And also, Canada is where a lot of the Caterpillar heavy equipment mining vehicles are made, anyways. So, yeah, it's not like they have a vehicle supply issue. But yeah, he has an obsession with saying X. He has an obsession with saying decades for everything, for some reason. But no, it won't take Canada decades to expand their output. They are already expanding their output. It will take them a couple of years at most. Just like as Russia's oil output hits its major downturn from lack of upkeep and technical assistance and spare parts from Western companies, because again, despite the image Moscow and many Russia fanboys want to post in the comments, uh, Russia was not self-sustaining its oil industry either. Its recovery from its post-Soviet collapse was because of the entrance of the outside oil industries, and its now ongoing downturn that, as I said in that community post, they are attempting to preemptively cover up by saying they're deliberately taking 500,000 barrels per day offline as a retaliation measure against Europe, even though they already shut down the oil output that Europe isn't buying anymore. So shutting down this 500,000 barrels a day wouldn't be retaliating against Europe. It would be retaliating against their own friends, China and India, who kind of rely on them. So there's the difference between modern Russia and the USSR. Modern Russia is really bad at lying. Like the USSR was really good at it. The USSR actually like told believable lies. Modern Russia is like doesn't even put effort into the lying anymore. It's really fallen from its former heydays. But yeah, they do supply a portion of the world's potash fertilizer, although not nearly the portion that Canada does. Canada is the uh, Saudi Arabia is an overused comparison, and it really doesn't even apply here. Uh, Canada is the uh, Canada is to the world's potash supply what South Africa is to the world's platinum group metal supply. So we will be fine in regards to potash. Just as we will be fine in terms of nitrogenous fertilizer, as Russia does fix about 10% of the world's nitrogen. However, there are many nitrogen fixation plants across the world in countries that are more than ready to take up that burden because they're they're more than ready to get paid the elevated prices to supply that nitrogen to fill that gap, which they already are. China is primarily the one that jumped on board the quickest. They're more than willing to make that money. One area where Russia is a major hit is diamond supply in terms of pure diamonds, aka the kind that the kind that rich people will only accept in their jewelry, whereas the rest of us and the industrial processes that require diamonds, like various types of lasers, are perfectly fine with synthetic diamonds because they have the same properties and deflect the light or refract the light the same way. But in terms of the supply of pure diamonds for rich people's jewelry, Russia is actually a pretty big hit. They are a huge supplier, along with, oh, look again, it's South Africa again. But yeah, don't worry about the pure natural diamond stuff because about 10 to 15% of the industrial needs are supplied by natural diamonds, whereas the rest is supplied by synthetic. And yes, we do have the capacity easily to make more synthetic diamonds. It would just require paying a bit more for them. Although with a sudden supply crunch for natural diamonds, they're about to become synthetic ones are about to become even more drastically cheaper than natural ones, anyways. And oh, look who's on the list again. It's South Africa for the 47th time. So in this case, it's zircon sand, which is a special, specific elemental type of sand, which is critical to the casting mold process for large, specifically shaped metallic structures, such as uh, the one of the main things is engine blocks for vehicles. Large metal components with precise, intricate shapes like that have to be poured in a zircon sand mold, and specifically a zircon sand mold. That's like the only thing that really does it. And about a fourth of the world's supply comes from South Africa. However, in this case, there actually is a substitute because Australia exists. Oh, Aussie world, we all love you guys. This giant mound of any and every metal and mineral you could ever want. Australia supplies another big chunk of the world's zircon sand and has quite a bit that it could easily expand mining capacity into. So the zircon issue would only very briefly be an issue because Australia could easily just cover for it. And then we're going to check chat. Well, yeah, their economy was on the up, but then they decided they wanted to get all oppressiony and genocide. The tribal stuff like really is a killer. Ethiopia, Congo, Somalia, Uganda, Rwanda, Central African Republic, Myanmar, even actually over in Asia, when they're not fighting the British or fighting the central government, they are fighting each other. Goodbye, Nebraska. The whole South Africa power grid issue uh, has it's been building for a while. This actual collapse has only started in the last like 2 years. Um, the In terms of the corruption, the dismantling via corruption of the power grid in South Africa, that started in its major portion around like 2010 or 2012. That's when everything got really bad, and it has stacked since then until now. It's hit the point where it can't the actual damage that's been incurred can't be held off any longer, and so now it's all falling apart. Anybody else? No. Did I miss anything huge up here? Doesn't look like it. Okay. Okay. Now, for a country we have not gone to yet, Iran is actually potentially causing some issues. Iran has been in and out of chaos for the last several months. For those who aren't aware, the people are off and on rising up against the government. Finally, granted, they did that back in 2009, but then the government killed like a couple hundred people, and then they gave up. Now the people seem to be not really giving up this time because the government tried killing a couple hundred people again, except it didn't work the way that it did back in 2009. And so they actually conceded to some of the people's demands. Not all of them, because all of the people's demands would include the government resigning and establishing a non-repressive regime. But they actually did concede to a few of the people's demands, which is good because it shows that that the government is actually afraid in this case. Iran is a potential risk at the moment in terms of strontium, which is it is not the pure element, but rather the minerals it occurs in. Strontium carbonate and the like are critical to magnets because magnets are not just pure like iron or pure nickel, cobalt, samarium, or what have you. Uh, a lot of them because a lot of those would not withstand like certain properties or certain stresses. So a lot of them are sort of bound together by being uh, mixed with strontium ceramic. Much more so in the case of iron than with the others, but that is one of strontium's key critical uses. And Iran mines about 1/3 of the world's strontium supply. So that is a potential issue, although Spain does have plenty up there in the northwest that they could expand into, but that would take them a few years. And they're European, so they're really like lopsidedly all green, everything anti-mining stuff. So they would have to have their arm twisted a bit. Nickel, just from demand, nickel supply is going to be a bit strained. But because of what we already talked about several minutes ago with the Russia issues, there's going to be a supply issue from Russia's angle. Russia's not too big of a supplier, thankfully, but they are just enough to register on my list, meaning they are in double digits. They supply, at the moment at least, their output is dropping, so their share is lowering. They supply about 10% of the world's nickel. However, Indonesia has just completed massive nickel mining expansion projects. So as Russia's output is now declining since the end of this fall, Indonesia is more than readily filling any of those gaps. Uh, oh hey, look at this! Are you guys surprised? Are you? We're back in South Africa again. South Africa, you are such a problem. Um, so Ionite, a special mineral, probably one of my favorite, like crystals, favorite gemstone stuff. Kyanite is a critical component of the refractory insulators, like the material with which we make industrial furnaces and the ladles that carry molten metal in refineries and factories and stuff. A decent part of that material composing that is kyanite. And we have a problem here because about 40% of the world's kyanite comes from South Africa. So that supply is in drastic danger. Although thankfully there's kyanite everywhere. Uh, it would just have to have expansions in terms of its other mining operations. We have a lot of kyanite in the U.S., for example, and also there's a lot down in Mexico. So us in Mexico could actually step up and fill that gap, but it would take us like a year or two to expand our mining operations. But once again, South Africa causing everybody problems. All right, what else do we got? Uh, oh yeah, we have potentially, depending on how things go with Turkey, uh, potentially, if there's another major earthquake over in the west, for say, or if uh, if they have some internal unrest, which they might, because with the whole botched earthquake stuff, the people are not all that happy with Erdogan. So there's no telling where that might go. Turkey supplies about 3/4 of the world's boron. Boron is really critical. We use it to make non-flat glass, glass that has like curves, and I'm not talking about like your car windows or your windshield that has a slight curve. That's still considered flat glass. Glass that has like actual curves to it. Any kind of glass that's going to deal with chemicals or glass that's going to be in contact with heat, and also modern day really efficient insulation for buildings involved for the fiberglass portion, and also most critically, it is required for the fiber optic glass to make fiber optic cables, which allow our modern day instantaneous communication that you all are listening and watching to me, or listening to and watching me via right this instant. 3/4 of that supply comes from here in Western Turkey, primarily because that's where a lot of it is. Also, primarily because it's cheap coming from Turkey. There are other supplies. Excuse me, move, mouse cursor. I didn't click on Pennsylvania. Google Earth, don't do this. Don't do this, Google Earth. If you don't start letting my mouse cursor move, I'm going to plug in an actual physical mouse. There we go. In Utah and Montana in the US, there is a fair deal of boron. I believe there is some backup home in Alaska, also, probably on the Kenai Peninsula, because that's where a lot of stuff is. Oh, Alaska, my home, where I should be, but I'm not because I got 2020'd by 2020 and have been trapped living down with family in the regular, miserable lower 48 US ever since. Get me out of here. Also, who else has boron? If I remember correctly, think I think some of the Central Asian nations have some boron. It's usually closer to mountains and volcanoes, so it's probably Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan that have it, but I'm not certain. But we've primarily been relying on Turkey because it's really heavily concentrated and is Turkey mining it is really cheap. But that's presenting a potential problem. So be on the lookout potentially for that if anything happens. Again, Turkey's not one of the bigger risk factors. The bigger risk factors are the ones that are already happening, i.e., Russia, Myanmar, the Congo, and especially South Africa. Oh, South Africa. All right. What else do we have? That's about it, actually, other than oil and gas supply, which is coming in to various issues. Uh, Nigeria is starting to rise up as an issue now because their system is so degraded that they can only maintain probably about 1.3 million barrels per day instead of the 2 million barrels per day they're capable of. And also, they're potentially going to tip into some large unrest because uh, the people are not happy with the election and they've started to get violent. Libya is always an issue. Their civil war could flip back on at the drop of a dime. Iran, if things like suddenly like go full scale on unrest, Iran could abruptly shut down. And then, of course, there's Russia, who already is down to around 9.5 million barrels per day from the roughly 11 that they were at pre-invasion. That 1.5 that they're down by already is not from degradation of stuff. That's not from the downturn I was talking about yet. That is them just having to shut stuff off because of lack of buyers. However, now this spring is about when I thought the downturn would actually come into play, would begin. And lo and behold, as we head into the spring, as I said in that community post, they made that sudden announcement that they're going to totally on purpose shut down 500,000 barrels per day to get back at Europe, even though they already shut off the stuff to Europe. But hey, like I said, they're not the USSR anymore, so they're not good at lying anymore. That was like, I guess that was like one of the good things about having the USSR around, is like they were actually good at lying. Uh, those are the primary, oil and gas risks. None of the other stuff is really in any big trouble, uh, except, I mean, there's a tiny chance, I guess, but it really doesn't look like it. There was a tiny chance that there might have been some unrest in Brazil, but it looks like it was dealt with pretty handily, and I don't see anything else springing up since then. So Brazil should mostly be fine. That's it for this one then, or at least for the primary content. Wow, look, for the first time ever, what I said was going to be a short stream actually ended up being a shorter stream, at least. What are you dabbing for? What are you dabbing about, Josh? So, nobody else saying anything, or at least it doesn't look like it. All right. So, anything else I want to mention while we're still going? Oh, yeah. So, similar to how they keep finding more and more oil offshore of Guyana. Well, I'm now about to start that hype train for Namibia because not this calendar year, but this year, as in since they found the first one last year, uh, for the third time this year, which is technically almost over because I think it was during spring that they found the first one. They found even more oil offshore of Namibia, specifically in this area right here, this little curved in like depression bit on their offshore shelf. So similar to Guyana, Namibia is coming in at just the right time. Although unlike Guyana, Namibia actually has various other resources they're going to be entering the production market of at just the right time as we start heading down the various societal slopes, which heading down those slopes causes prices to head up their slopes. So Namibia is coming in just the right time and will actually be able to properly benefit because primarily their population is so low, similar to how Guyana is able to benefit so easily because their population is also so low. Was there anything else? Yeah. Also, as I kept telling you guys about how there's so much oil that has been completely actually untouched in Iraq. Uh, One of the major fields, not even in the unexplored portions of up here, but down here in the readily explored portions, there are still huge fields that have never actually even been drilled. One of them is drilling operations are beginning on it for the first time ever, and it should come online in a year or two. And it's starting production. Its initial jump up should go up to about 250,000 barrels a day right off the bat. So that's coming into play. And then anything else I wanted to do while we were online? I don't think so. Oh, since I'm over Mongolia, Mongolia is going to be the next country that's getting its country-specific resource, natural resources review video. If you haven't seen it, I already did one for Afghanistan about how Afghanistan isn't actually the wondrous treasure trove of mineral resources that people keep making hype videos about it being. It's in terms of what kinds of resources it has and how much, it's kind of in the middle of the resource abundance slider. It's like it's pretty average actually. So I'm pretty sure that claiming it's like a wonder cave of resources is just some retrograde like backwards through time wishful thinking of trying to think that trying to like superimpose a like secret real reason for the US going to Afghanistan instead of just accepting the fact that it was a stupid decision, which it was. So no, there was no big pile of wonder minerals there. It's pretty average. Mongolia does have quite a bit. Mongolia is a bit above average, which I will cover in the specific video about them. But that should be about it for this one. And nothing new from chat. Anybody other than Josh dabbing and not explaining what he's dabbing about? You can't just dab in response to everything. All right, then I guess that will be it. So thank you everybody for coming on. Thank you everybody for showing up, and for everybody who stuck around the whole time. I probably won't stream again this week. Probably not. So I probably won't stream again until next week because I'm not feeling that great. But I mean, we'll see. Maybe if like stuff happens, then stuff happens. But that's it for this one. So thanks everybody, and I will see you all around next time.